The moment came unexpectedly, which is how denial is often pierced. Gunter's Lacus, an architect in Bridgeport, Connecticut, had been watching his small kids at soccer practice. They came running toward him when practice was over, sweating, giggling, and clamoring for Italian ices. That was when he realized how far he had fallen. In a lush, beautifully landscaped suburban park, on a late afternoon in summer, he felt ashamed. They wanted an Italian ice after practice, he told me, and I didn't have $4 in my wallet to buy it for them. I didn't have any money at all. The 21st century has not been kind to the middle class in America. The economic nightmare that descended on the Lacus family was part of an epic change in the lives of individuals and families across the country. Millions of hard-working men and women who had believed they were solidly anchored economically found themselves cast into a financial abyss, struggling with joblessness, home foreclosures, and personal bankruptcy. Some were astonished to find themselves turning to food banks and homeless shelters. The hard times would eventually spread like a blight across the country, wiping out savings, crushing home values, and upending carefully nurtured career plans. For much of the population, the very notion of economic security evaporated. Spirits sank along with bank balances. The Great Recession and its dismal aftermath showed unmistakably that a great change had come across the country. The years that had been unkind to the middle class were positively brutal to the working class and the poor. The United States was no longer a place of widely shared prosperity and limitless optimism. It was a country that had lost its way. By 2012, the net worth of American families had fallen back to levels of the early 1990s. Poverty was expanding, and the middle class had entered a protracted period of decline. Signs of distress were everywhere. There were not nearly enough jobs for all who wanted and needed to work. Middle-aged professionals were being forced into early, unwanted retirement. Low-wage contingent work, without benefits and with no retirement security, was increasingly becoming the norm. Even young graduates with impressive credentials from world-class colleges and universities were finding it difficult to put together a decent standard of living. For millions of Americans, there was no work at all. As I traveled the country doing research for this book, I couldn't help but notice that something fundamental in the very character of the United States had shifted. There was a sense of powerlessness and resignation among ordinary people that I hadn't been used to seeing. The country seemed demoralized. I remembered the United States as a far more confident and boisterous place in the days when I was growing up in suburban New Jersey in the 1950s and 60s. Kids, grown-ups, everybody had their dreams and were unabashedly flexing their muscles, ready to make them come true. The bigger the dream, the better. Each day was the dawn of new possibilities. All you needed was energy and a willingness to work hard. That bold confidence in the future now seemed as old-fashioned as typewriters and telephone booths. There was still plenty to admire about the United States, and crowds could be heard from time to time chanting USA, USA at rallies and ball games. But what I was seeing in my travels was a deeply wounded society with a majority of respondents in poll after poll saying the U.S. was in a state of decline. The symptoms were numerous, varied, and scary. The economy seemed to work only for the very wealthy. By 2013, the richest 1% in America was hauling in nearly a quarter of the nation's entire annual income and owned 40% of its wealth. The bottom 80% of Americans, 250 million people, were struggling to hold on to just 7% of the nation's wealth. No wonder people were demoralized.